How did hearts truly connect when status dictated destiny? How did whispers of affection travel through stone castles and bustling markets 1,000 years ago during the Middle Ages? Who were the unsung heroes and heroines of romance, helping Cupid's arrows find their mark in a world far removed from dating apps and coffee dates? Turns out finding a medieval soulmate often required more than just a charming smile or a brave deed. It required a special kind of assistance, the subtle nudge of a trusted ally, the careful orchestration of an elaborate plan. These were the medieval wingmen and wingwomen, skilled operators in the complex dance of desire and duty. Number 9. The courtly love facilitator. The medieval, courtly love tradition, often explored in the romances of the 12th and 13th centuries, presented a very specific kind of relationship, one often idealized, unconsummated, and conducted with great secrecy and elaborate codes of conduct. This was not about finding a spouse for land or lineage. This was about the pure, often unattainable adoration of a noble lady by a knight, frequently married to another. For this delicate dance of devotion to unfold, it needed an architect, a silent partner, someone who understood the intricate rules and could navigate the perilous waters of illicit affection. This figure, often a troubadour, a quêtrice, or even a sympathetic poet, served as the ultimate courtly love facilitator. They did not overtly push two people together in the way a modern wingman might arrange a meeting at a tavern. Instead, their role was far more subtle, more artistic, and arguably far more dangerous. A troubadour, hailing from the Occitan region of southern France, was a master of lyrical poetry and melody. They would travel from court to court, singing of heroic deeds, epic loves, and the beauty of noble ladies. But beyond mere entertainment, these performers were keen observers of courtly dynamics. They saw the longing gazes, the blush on a lady's cheek when a certain knight entered the hall, the subtle shift in a knight's demeanor when his lady was near. The facilitator would then craft verses, not just general odes to beauty, but compositions laden with veiled references, specific metaphors, and thinly disguised praises that spoke directly to the heart of the beloved and crucially to the one who adored her. A song performed in the presence of both parties could be a profound declaration without a single word being overtly spoken. It was a communication conduit, disguised as art. Consider the narrative found in the works attributed to Andreas Capellanus, particularly De Amore, a treatise on courtly love. While a theoretical work, it describes scenarios where a knight might express his devotion through a third party. The facilitator here might be the one who suggests the particular metaphor for the lady's eyes, or the specific heroic act to be praised, ensuring the message resonates deeply with the intended recipient. The facilitator understood the language of flowers, the symbolism of colors, the meaning behind a specific jewel or a chosen falcon. They would subtly weave these elements into a performance, creating a tapestry of meaning that only the two lovers would fully unravel, while others might simply enjoy the artistry. Sometimes, the facilitator's role was more direct, though still discreet. A lady-in-waiting, skilled in poetry herself, might compose a response on behalf of her mistress, filled with equally coded messages of encouragement or polite dismissal. This was not a blunt letter, but a nuanced piece of literature that maintained the high ideals of courtly love, even as it served as a secret conversation. These go-betweens might also be responsible for delivering small tokens, a scarf, a ring, a lock of hair, but the delivery was never just a drop-off. It was accompanied by a carefully worded phrase, a subtle gesture, or a performance that ensured the emotional weight of the object was fully conveyed. The troubadour, for example, might carry a lady's glove, not just as a lost item, but as a silent commission for a knight to champion her in a tournament, elevating a personal gesture into a public display of devotion. The risks involved for such facilitators were substantial. Courtly love, though celebrated in song, often bordered on adultery, a grave sin and a social transgression. A misstep, an obvious declaration, or a lack of discretion could lead to severe punishment for the lovers and dire consequences for the intermediary. Therefore, the most effective facilitators were masters of subtlety, able to read a room, understand the political landscape of a court, and gauge the temperament of lords and ladies alike. They had to be trusted implicitly by both parties, acting as a living, breathing, encrypted channel for emotions too potent to be openly declared. Their success lay in their ability to make the impossible seem achievable, even if only in the realm of idealized affection. The power of the facilitator also extended to managing expectations and even gently guiding the romantic narrative. If a knight's devotion was becoming too overt, or if a lady's honor was at risk, the facilitator might compose a song about the virtue of restraint, the beauty of platonic admiration, or the perils of overzealous pursuit. They could subtly shift the focus, cooling ardor or encouraging perseverance as needed, all while maintaining the dignity and secrecy of the relationship. They were the unsung poets of passion, the quiet conductors of courtly desire, shaping the very atmosphere in which love could blossom, however fleetingly or tragically, within the strictures of medieval society. Their legacy lives on in the very verses they crafted, which still echo with the unspoken yearnings of a bygone age. Number 8. The discreet messenger. In an age before instant communication, where gossip spread like wildfire and personal interactions were often observed, the role of the discreet messenger was absolutely critical for any burgeoning medieval romance, especially those operating outside the bounds of conventional courtship or marriage arrangements. This individual, often a loyal servant, a trusted page, or a lady-in-waiting, became the lifeline between two hearts, separated by castle walls, social hierarchy, or simply the ever-present eyes of chaperones and watchful relatives. Their mission was simple in concept, yet complex in execution: to transmit messages, gifts, and even arrange clandestine meetings, all without raising suspicion. They were the ultimate operators of the medieval secret service of love. A lady-in-waiting, living in close proximity to her mistress, was privy to her innermost thoughts and secret desires. She shared her mistress's chambers, assisted with dressing, and was present during her private moments. This intimate access made her an ideal conduit for messages. A knight, perhaps smitten with a noble lady, could entrust a small rolled parchment to his own page, who would then seek out the lady-in-waiting. The exchange would be swift, almost imperceptible. Casual greeting, a shared laugh over some trivial courtly matter, and the message would pass from one hand to the other, perhaps tucked into a sleeve or hidden within a folded piece of embroidery. The lady-in-waiting, upon returning to her mistress's chambers, would discreetly deliver the note, perhaps during a moment when other servants were occupied, or when the mistress was alone by a window, seemingly lost in thought. The content of these messages was rarely straightforward. They were often filled with flowery language, coded references, and metaphors that only the lovers would fully grasp. The messenger's role wasn't just to deliver, it was to understand the subtext, to interpret the unsaid, and sometimes even to improvise a suitable response if an immediate reply was impossible. A lady-in-waiting might be tasked with reporting on the lady's mood, her reception of a gift, or the feasibility of a particular meeting time. She became a living, breathing status update, providing crucial feedback that allowed the romantic pursuit to continue with precision. For a knight, his trusted squire or page often filled this vital role. A young page, seemingly innocently running errands across the castle grounds, could carry a small, beautifully crafted ring, a ribbon, or a pressed flower. He might be instructed to deliver it to a specific spot, perhaps a secluded garden bench or a hidden alcove in the castle chapel, where the lady and her confidant might happen to be. Page's youth and apparent lack of guile made him less conspicuous than an adult servant. He could blend into the background, observing and reporting on the general activity of the court, offering insights into when and where the lady might be unaccompanied or less guarded. One famous example, though often idealized, is found in the romances of Tristan and Isolde, where the trusted servant Brangane plays a crucial role in facilitating and covering up the lover's secret. Her loyalty, discretion, and willingness to risk her own safety for the sake of the lovers underscore the extreme importance of such a figure. While often tragic, these stories illustrate the absolute reliance lovers placed on their discreet messengers. Without them, communication would be impossible, and even the most ardent affections would wither under the watchful eyes of medieval society. The risks for the messenger were immense. Discovery of their involvement in a forbidden or unsanctioned romance could lead to severe punishment, loss of their position, or even worse fates, depending on the severity of the transgression. Loyalty was not merely a virtue, it was a necessity. A messenger had to be someone whose silence could be trusted, someone who understood the gravity of their task, and someone with a remarkable ability to blend in and remain unnoticed. They were adept at creating alibis, redirecting suspicion, and maintaining an air of complete innocence. Even as they orchestrated the most sensitive of romantic exchanges, their actions were subtle yet profound. A discreet messenger might subtly alter the timing of a morning walk, suggesting a route that coincidentally passed by the knight's training grounds. They might arrange for a chance encounter in the castle library, ensuring that the lovers found themselves alone for a few fleeting moments amidst ancient tomes. They were masters of plausible deniability, their every move designed to appear mundane while serving a deeply romantic purpose. They were the silent orchestrators of glances, whispers, and secret touches, allowing medieval lovers to navigate the treacherous landscape of courtly love, ensuring that even in the most restrictive environments, passion could find a way to express itself, however furtively. Number 7. The matchmaker. While romantic love certainly existed in the Middle Ages, the primary driver for marriage, especially among the nobility and the burgeoning merchant class, was often less about personal affection and more about practical considerations, land alliances, wealth, and lineage. In this highly pragmatic landscape, the matchmaker emerged as a pivotal figure. This was not a romantic wingman in the modern sense, orchestrating first dates for casual crushes. Instead, the medieval matchmaker was a strategic negotiator, a shrewd diplomat, and sometimes a familial elder whose primary goal was to secure the most advantageous union possible. They were the ultimate architects of dynastic futures, and occasionally they even managed to spark a little genuine affection along the way. The matchmaker could take many forms. Often, it was a respected family elder, an aunt, an uncle, or a particularly influential grandparent who held significant sway within the family network. These individuals possessed an intimate knowledge of family histories, dowry, expectations, and potential heirs. They would leverage their social connections and reputation to identify suitable candidates, initiate negotiations, and smooth over any potential disagreements between prospective families. Their involvement lent an air of legitimacy and authority to the entire process, reassuring all parties that the proposed union was sound. For high-stakes marriages, particularly those involving royal or powerful noble houses, the matchmaker could be a specially appointed emissary, a trusted ambassador, or even a bishop. These individuals would travel between courts carrying portraits, detailed descriptions of the prospective bride or groom, and intricate genealogies. They were not merely couriers. They were skilled negotiators, trained in diplomacy and rhetoric. They would subtly assess the character, health, and intellectual prowess of the potential spouse, reporting back their findings with meticulous detail. They might highlight a prince's strength in battle or a princess's skill in embroidery, emphasizing qualities that would appeal to the receiving family and enhance the perceived value of the match. The role of the matchmaker often began long before the potential spouses even met. They would conduct extensive background checks, inquiring into the financial standing of the family, the health of the lineage, and any existing debts or disputes. They understood the complexities of inheritance laws and the political implications of inter-family alliances. Their recommendations were based on cold, hard facts, not fleeting emotions. When they presented a proposal, it was backed by extensive research and a deep understanding of what constituted a good match in medieval society. An excellent example of matchmakers in action can be found throughout the history of European monarchies. When Eleanor of Aquitaine divorced Louis VII of France, her subsequent marriage to Henry Plantagenet, who would become Henry II of England, was a strategic union that brought vast territories under English control. While love may or may not have been a factor, the negotiations for such a monumental marriage would have involved countless intermediaries, each acting as a matchmaker, assessing the political benefits, the territories involved, and the potential heirs. These were not casual conversations. They were protracted negotiations, often spanning months or even years, with multiple emissaries carrying proposals and counter-proposals across kingdoms. Sometimes the matchmaker's role was more nuanced, especially within smaller communities or among the lesser nobility. A village elder might identify a strong, hard-working son from one family and a virtuous, skilled daughter from another, seeing how their complementary attributes would benefit both households. They might subtly arrange opportunities for the young man and woman to meet, perhaps at a local fair, a church feast, or during a harvest celebration. While the primary goal was still a practical union, these orchestrated encounters allowed for a degree of personal acquaintance, giving the potential spouses a chance to observe each other, even if only from a distance, and perhaps even develop a modicum of natural affinity. The matchmaker also played a crucial role in overcoming obstacles. Perhaps there was a dispute over a dowry, a family feud, or a perceived slight. The skilled matchmaker would step in, using their influence and negotiation skills to mediate the conflict, finding compromises that satisfied both parties. They were peacemakers as much as they were deal-makers, ensuring that the path to marriage was as smooth as possible, even when faced with deeply entrenched animosities. Their success was measured not by romantic bliss, but by the stability and prosperity of the resulting union, ensuring the continuation of families and the solidification of power structures. They were the pragmatists of passion, shaping the course of medieval society one strategic marriage at a time. Number 6. The protective kin. In the Middle Ages, the family was not merely a unit of affection. It was the fundamental social and economic bedrock of society. Honor, reputation, and inheritance were tied inextricably to kinship. When it came to matters of the heart, particularly for young men and women of noble or even substantial commoner status, the family, especially older brothers, sisters, or cousins, often acted as a powerful, albeit sometimes intimidating, wingman or wingwoman. Their role was not to find love for their relative, but rather to protect their reputation, that potential suitors, and ensure any romantic entanglement did not bring shame or disadvantage to the family name. They were the vigilant guardians, the gatekeepers of honor, and sometimes the subtle facilitators of approved affections. For a young lady, an older brother, or a fiercely loyal cousin served as an immediate, ever-present deterrent to unsuitable advances. Any suitor had to first pass muster with these protective kin. A knight wishing to woo a lady of noble birth would know that he would likely encounter her brother first, perhaps on the jousting field, during a hunt, or at a courtly feast. The brother would observe him, scrutinize his manners, assess his martial prowess, and perhaps even subtly test his character through conversation. A suitor who displayed arrogance, cowardice, or a lack of respect for the lady's family would quickly find the path to her heart barred by an unyielding wall of sibling disapproval, often enforced by more than just words. Conversely, if a suitor was deemed worthy, the protective kin could become an unwitting ally. A brother might perhaps speak favorably of a certain knight to his sister, highlighting his bravery or his lands, thus subtly encouraging her to look upon him with favor. A sister, seeing her brother smitten with a lady, might discreetly find out information about the lady's temperament, her family background, or her interests, relaying it back to her brother, giving him valuable intelligence for his courtship. They would not overtly set them up in the modern sense, but they would create opportunities for interaction within acceptable social boundaries, ensuring that any budding romance was conducted honorably and within sight of appropriate chaperone. The narratives of medieval romance and even historical accounts are filled with examples of this protective kinship. When a princess or noblewoman was to be married for political alliance, her brothers would often accompany her on the journey to her new home, acting as her protectors and ensuring her safe passage. They would also serve as the initial representatives of her family, observing the future husband's court and behavior, and ensuring that their sister was treated with the respect due to her station. Their presence was a powerful statement of familial unity and a subtle warning against any mistreatment. Sometimes the role of protective kin extended to creating opportunities for interaction under the guise of family events. A cousin might host a hunt, inviting both a prospective suitor and the target of his affections, ensuring they would be in the same social circles. A sister might arrange for her brother and his beloved to be seated near each other at a banquet, or to participate in the same group activity, like a game of chess, or a stroll in the garden, making sure the interactions were supervised, but allowed to unfold naturally. These were not grand schemes, but subtle manipulations of social settings that facilitated proximity and observation without direct intervention. Consequences of failing to heed the protective kin could be severe. A knight who attempted to woo a lady without first securing the tacit approval of her male relatives risked insult, challenge, or even outright violence. A lady who engaged in a secret rendezvous without the knowledge of her female confidants or chaperones risked scandal and the destruction of her reputation, which could doom her marriage prospects entirely. The watchful eyes of kin were a constant reminder of the social expectations that governed medieval courtship. Ultimately, the protective kin were an inherent part of the medieval dating landscape. They were the first line of defense against unsuitable matches, and the primary arbiters of their family's honor. Their actions, whether overt or subtle, were always driven by the desire to secure the best possible future for their relative, ensuring that any romantic endeavor served the broader interests of the family. They were the silent but powerful gatekeepers of medieval affection, ensuring that love, when it did blossom, did so within the rigid confines of societal expectations and familial approval. Number 5. The spiritual advisor. In an age profoundly shaped by Christian theology, where the Church held immense moral authority and influenced every aspect of life, the spiritual advisor held a unique and often surprising role in the landscape of medieval romance. This figure, typically a confessor, a local priest, a nun, or even a hermit known for their wisdom, was not usually involved in arranging marriages or carrying love letters. Instead, their wingman capabilities stemmed from their position as a confidant, a moral guide, and a recipient of intimate confessions. They could subtly influence romantic outcomes through counsel, spiritual encouragement, or by acting as a highly discreet, morally sanctioned intermediary, particularly in situations of moral dilemma or societal constraint. A nobleman or lady, grappling with forbidden affections, a difficult arranged marriage, or simply seeking guidance on matters of the heart, would often turn to their confessor. In the private, sacred space of confession, individuals revealed their deepest thoughts, desires, and sins. This gave the spiritual advisor unparalleled insight into the emotional state of their penitent. While bound by the seal of the confessional, meaning they could not reveal specifics, they could offer general counsel that subtly steered the individual's romantic path. If a knight confessed his ardent, perhaps illicit, love for a married lady. The confessor might not condemn it outright, but rather emphasize the virtues of patience, purity, or the importance of a good law-acceptable avenues for his affections, or perhaps even towards finding a spouse where his love would be righteous. Conversely, if a young woman was being pressured into an unwanted marriage, she might confess her unhappiness or her preference for another. The spiritual advisor, while unable to directly challenge the family's authority, might offer counsel that emboldened her to express her concerns more clearly, or they might subtly speak to the parents about the spiritual importance of a consensual union, framed in terms of avoiding sin or ensuring piety. They could become a sympathetic ear, a source of moral courage, and sometimes a quiet advocate for the individual's emotional well-being within the strictures of religious doctrine. Nuns, too, played an intriguing role, especially in convents, where noble daughters might be educated or temporarily reside. A nun could be a trusted confidant, offering wisdom and practical advice, sometimes even subtly facilitating communication between young lovers through letters or carefully worded visits, all under the guise of pastoral care or intellectual discussion. They understood the social pressures and expectations placed upon young women, and while upholding religious principles, they could offer empathetic support. They might observe the dynamics of family visits, noting who seemed genuinely interested in a young woman's welfare, and who merely paid lip service to social convention. This observation could then be used to offer targeted advice. Historical figures like Hildegard of Bingen, though primarily a mystic and abbess, received letters seeking spiritual advice that touched upon matters of interpersonal relationships. While not directly winging, her responses would provide moral frameworks that could indirectly influence a person's romantic choices or their approach to love within the bounds of Christian ethics. Church's teachings on marriage, fidelity, and the sanctity of vows formed the very fabric of medieval societal norms, and the spiritual advisor was the interpreter of these norms. Their influence was indirect but profound. They might recommend specific prayers or acts of charity that subtly brought a particular individual into the orbit of another, or they might offer general advice on how to discern true affection from fleeting infatuation. They could emphasize the importance of shared faith in a marriage, thus subtly encouraging a young man to look favorably upon a particularly devout young woman. They were the quiet moral compasses, guiding individuals through the turbulent waters of medieval courtship, ensuring that any romantic aspirations aligned, or at least did not openly conflict, with the prevailing religious and social order. Their wing was spiritual guidance, a powerful force in shaping medieval hearts and minds. Number 4. The battle-hardened companion. For a medieval knight, a significant part of his appeal to a noble lady lay not just in his lands or lineage, but in his prowess, his courage, and his honor on the battlefield. In an age of constant conflict and chivalric ideals, a knight's reputation was forged in the heat of combat and the rigors of military campaigning. Here, the battle-hardened companion, often a fellow knight, a loyal squire who had seen real action, or a trusted soldier who had fought alongside the protagonist, became an invaluable, if unconventional, wingman. Their role was to bear witness, to attest to the knight's valor, and to enhance his heroic image, making him more desirable in the eyes of a lady who valued strength and virtue. They were the living testimonials to a knight's worth. The direct intervention of a battle-hardened companion as a wingman might not involve whispered suggestions or discreet note-passing. Instead, it manifested through their very presence and their stories. When a knight returned from a campaign, his companions would be with him. At feasts in the Great Hall or during informal gatherings, the topic of recent battles, tournaments, or dangerous quests would inevitably arise. It was during these moments that the companion would subtly, or sometimes overtly, recount tales of their comrades' bravery. "Did you hear how Sir Gareth held the pass against 10 men? Or, Lady Isolde, you should have seen Sir Lancelot's prowess at the tourney. He unhorsed every man he faced. These were not boasts from the knight himself, which would have been unchivalrous, but rather third-party endorsements that carried immense weight. A squire, having served his knight for years, knew every detail of his master's military achievements and even his personal virtues. He would have witnessed his knight's courage firsthand, his generosity, his leadership, and his unwavering loyalty. When speaking with other squires, servants, or even indirectly with ladies-in-waiting, the squire could artfully weave in anecdotes that highlighted his master's most attractive qualities. He might mention how his lord had gallantly protected a local village from brigands, or how he had risked his own life to save a fellow soldier on the battlefield. These stories, told with conviction and personal experience, painted a vivid picture of a man worthy of admiration and affection. The power of this type of wingman lay in their credibility. They had shared the dangers, witnessed the trials, and understood the true character of the knight under pressure. Their testimony was not flowery prose or polite flattery. It was the unfiltered truth of experience. In a society that valued chivalry and martial skill, such endorsements were far more available than any personal declaration of love. A lady would hear these tales and form an impression of the knight's honor, his reliability, and his capacity for protection, qualities highly sought after in a medieval husband. Consider the tales of King Arthur's knights. While often fictional, they reflect the societal values of the time. Lancelot's reputation, for instance, was built on his unmatched prowess in battle and tournament. His fellow knights, having witnessed his deeds, would undoubtedly propagate these stories, enhancing his legendary status and, by extension, his appeal to ladies of the court. Sir Gawain's unwavering loyalty and adherence to his word, tested on many adventures, would also be vouched for by his companions, solidifying his reputation as a man of integrity. The battle-hardened companion also provided a crucial element of social proof. In a world where appearances could be deceptive, having a loyal comrade who had literally stood shoulder to shoulder with the knight in perilous situations offered undeniable proof of his character. This was particularly important when knights traveled between courts, where their reputations might not precede them. A trusted companion could quickly establish the knight's bona fides, opening doors to noble circles and making him a more attractive prospect for marriage or courtly admiration. They were the living testament to the knight's honor, courage, and worth. Number 3. The royal emissary. When it came to unions of the highest nobility, particularly royal marriages, the stakes transcended mere personal preference. They involved the fate of kingdoms, the balance of power, and the continuation of dynasties. In this rarefied atmosphere, the royal emissary emerged as the most sophisticated and powerful wingman, or wingwoman. This was not a person focused on sparking personal affection, but rather on ensuring the strategic success of a monumental political alliance. Their wing work involved intricate diplomacy, detailed intelligence gathering, and the presentation of their sovereign's child as the most desirable match on the European stage. A royal emissary was typically a highly trusted diplomat, a seasoned nobleman, or even a high-ranking cleric, chosen for their discretion, eloquence, and shrewd understanding of international politics. Their mission would begin long before any potential spouses even met. They would be dispatched to a foreign court, not just to deliver a formal proposal, but to subtly yet thoroughly assess the prospective bride or groom. This assessment went far beyond a mere physical description. They would observe the individual's demeanor, intelligence, health, education, and even their piety. Are they strong enough to bear heirs? Are they politically astute? Do they possess the manners befitting a future queen or king? These were the questions the emissary had to answer. The emissary would carry portraits, sometimes painted in advance, though these were often idealized. More importantly, they would carry detailed letters of introduction and negotiation, often drafted with extreme care by the sovereign's most trusted advisors. Their task was to present their own monarch's child in the most favorable light possible, emphasizing their virtues, their accomplishments, and the immense benefits of an alliance with their kingdom. They might highlight the wealth of the dowry, the strategic advantage of shared borders, or the strength of the allied military forces. They were the ultimate sales representatives for a dynastic marriage. An excellent historical example is the numerous diplomatic missions sent by English, French, and Spanish monarchs throughout the medieval period to secure royal marriages. When Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon sought to marry their daughter Catherine to Arthur, Prince of Wales, a sophisticated network of emissaries was involved. These envoys would have traveled repeatedly between England and Spain, carrying not just proposals but also negotiating the intricate details of the dowry, the marriage treaty, and even the future living arrangements and religious practices of the princess. They would have relayed information about the young couple's suitability to their respective parents, smoothing over any potential concerns. Beyond formal negotiations, the royal emissaries' skill lay in subtle persuasion and observation. They would participate in courtly events, feasts, and hunts, constantly gathering information and building rapport. They might subtly encourage a cultural exchange or propose a joint venture that brought the two royal families into closer contact. They were adept at reading unspoken cues, understanding the true intentions behind diplomatic courtesies, and identifying potential obstacles to the marriage alliance, be they rival suitors, religious differences, or territorial disputes. Furthermore, the emissary often had to manage expectations and occasionally even gentle disappointments. If a potential match proved unsuitable, perhaps due to health issues or political complications, the emissary would have to delicately withdraw the proposal without causing insult or jeopardizing future relations. Conversely, if the match was highly desirable, they would advocate fiercely for its completion, sometimes engaging in protracted negotiations that could span years. Their success was measured by the stability of the alliance, the security of the succession, and the political advantage gained by their sovereign. They were the ultimate orchestrators of high-stakes romantic politics, ensuring that love, when it did emerge, served the grander purpose of kingdom and crown. Their work was the pinnacle of medieval winning in the service of power. Number 2, the entertainer. In the often rigid and formal atmosphere of medieval courts and noble households, genuine unscripted interaction between unattached men and women could be rare. Social etiquette, chaperones, and the ever-present weight of reputation meant that opportunities for playful flirtation or deep conversation were limited. This is where the entertainer, the minstrel, the jester, the traveling performer stepped into a surprisingly effective wingman role. Their purpose was to lighten the mood, create an atmosphere of relaxed amusement, and crucially, to provide cover and opportunity for subtle romantic overtures that would otherwise be impossible. They were the masters of distraction, the architects of levity, and the purveyors of coded messages disguised as merriment. A minstrel skilled in playing instruments and singing ballads could subtly dedicate a song to a particular lady, choosing verses that spoke of beauty, virtue, and valor in a way that resonated with the specific knight's known affections. Or they might sing a tale of a valiant hero whose qualities perfectly mirrored those of a suitor, encouraging a lady to view him with more favor. The beauty of their performance was that such illusions were public, yet personal, allowing emotions to be expressed without direct overt declaration. A minstrel might even incorporate a subtle wink or a knowing glance when performing a particularly relevant verse, acknowledging the unspoken connection between two individuals in the room. The jester, with their privileged position as a licensed fool, could be even bolder. They were allowed to mock, to tease, and to comment on courtly affairs in a way that others could not. This unique freedom allowed them to subtly highlight the virtues of a particular lady or gentleman, or to playfully hint at a budding romance, all under the guise of humor. Methinks Sir Reginald has a sudden fondness for crimson silks, a jester might quip, referring to a lady's dress, drawing attention to the knight's admiring gaze, without directly stating it. They could orchestrate games or activities that naturally brought people together, such as charades or riddle contests, ensuring that a desired pairing ended up on the same team or in close proximity, encouraging interaction. They saw the lingering glances, the blushes, the hushed conversations. They heard the whispers and the gossip. Armed with this knowledge, they could tailor their performances to facilitate a romantic connection. A minstrel might, for instance, play a lively tune that encouraged dancing, subtly steering two particular individuals into the same dance circle. A jester might create a humorous scenario that required two people to interact directly, perhaps by accidentally knocking something over that required both a lady and a knight to retrieve it, giving them a brief unsupervised moment. Their role was also to create an environment where the strictures of medieval etiquette could be momentarily relaxed. Laughter and enjoyment often loosened the grip of vigilant chaperones or strict social norms. In the midst of a boisterous feast or a captivating performance, a knight might risk a prolonged gaze, or a lady might offer a knowing smile, actions that might be deemed inappropriate in a more solemn setting. The entertainer was the catalyst for this temporary liberation, allowing authentic human connection to peek through the formal facade. Furthermore, the entertainer could serve as a discreet messenger, often without carrying any physical notes. A jester moving freely between different parts of the castle or different households could verbally convey a witty retort or a subtle compliment from one party to another, making it sound like a casual observation or a part of their usual banter. Lady Eleanor asked me to tell you that she quite admired your swiftness on the hunt today, Sir Thomas, a jester might say, with a knowing smirk, turning a simple comment into a veiled message of admiration. Their words were fleeting, leaving no incriminating evidence, yet carrying the weight of a personal message. The power of the entertainer as a wingman lay in their ability to manipulate the social atmosphere, to create opportunities for interaction where none would otherwise exist, and to convey messages through the subtle art of performance and humor. They were the unsung heroes of medieval revelry, transforming mere entertainment into a conduit for quiet courtship, ensuring that even in the most formal of settings, love could find a way to express itself, however playfully or indirectly. Number 1. The benevolent elder. In medieval society, age conferred wisdom, authority, and influence. The lord or lady of a manor, a respected abbess, or a particularly esteemed head of a household held immense sway over the lives of those under their roof or within their sphere of influence. This position allowed certain benevolent elders to act as subtle yet powerful wingmen and wingwomen, not through direct intervention in romantic feelings, but by skillfully orchestrating social environments that allowed young men and women to meet, interact, and propriety and familial approval. They were the discreet puppet masters of social gatherings, ensuring that eligible individuals found themselves in each other's orbits. The lady of the manor, for instance, held significant control over the daily lives of her household. She would supervise young noblewomen who came to her court for education and refinement, and she would host knights and squires who served her lord. By carefully managing invitations to feasts, tournaments, hunts, and other social events, she could ensure that specific young men and women were frequently in each other's company. She might arrange for them to be seated next to each other at dinner, to participate in the same group activities, or to be part of the same party on a ride through the estate. These were not random occurrences. They were often subtly orchestrated opportunities for interaction. A lord wishing to see his son or a favored ward well married might host a series of banquets or organize a hunting party, inviting eligible daughters from neighboring noble families. He might subtly praise the virtues of a particular young man to the father of a young woman he deemed suitable, or vice versa. While the ultimate decision on marriage rested with the families, the lord could create a conducive environment for initial attraction to blossom, making it easier for a matchmaker to later formalize an arrangement. He could emphasize certain qualities in a young man, such as his military prowess or his administrative skills, which would appeal to a potential father-in-law or highlight a young woman's accomplishments in household management, are her piety. The abbess of a prominent convent, where noble daughters often resided for education or temporary refuge, could also play this role. While cloistered, these convents were not entirely isolated. They received visitors, hosted religious festivals, and sometimes provided a neutral ground for families to meet. An abbess, knowing the background of her charges in the political landscape of the region, might subtly facilitate introductions between a young woman and a visiting noble family, ensuring that suitable individuals were aware of each other's presence and qualities, even if the primary purpose of the visit was religious or educational. She might speak highly of a particular young lady's virtues during conversations with visiting kin, acting as a quiet endorsement. The benevolent elders' influence stemmed from their authority and their deep understanding of social dynamics. They knew the eligible bachelors and spinsters in the region, their family histories, their reputations, and their prospects. They also understood the subtle nuances of medieval etiquette and the importance of allowing a degree of natural interaction without compromising propriety. They ensured that any budding romance was conducted within the bounds of respectability, allowing for observation and gradual acquaintance rather than secretive, risky encounters. The success of the benevolent elder as a wingman or wingwoman lay in their ability to facilitate organic connections within a structured social environment. They did not force affections, but rather cultivated the fertile ground in which they could grow. By hosting, inviting, seating, and subtly guiding social interactions, they ensured that the right people met, conversed, and perhaps even discovered a mutual interest, all under the watchful yet approving eye of authority. They were the ultimate social engineers of medieval romance, shaping the paths of young hearts without ever needing to utter a single direct word about love.